whenever there is an inordinate amount of power given to one person or two people and over a large denomination of other people, there's a potential for abuse. When you go into a church context, especially, when you have one in the IFB, there's one pastor that kind of leads everything, and they're called the man of God. So when you have the person who's the man of God and everything he says is essentially taken as gospel by everybody else, that gives him a lot of power, because he's got not only your attention as a leader, he's also your spiritual guru. He's also the person who maybe married you in a church setting. He conducted your wedding. He, maybe baptized your kids. Like, he has a lot of power and attention and kind of freedom to rule and reign over your family and yourself. And so, the conversations come up a lot. Like, do I think churches create abusers? There's a conversation to be had there. And I think there's a lot of pastors that aren't. So it's kind of tricky to say that, yes, it's always the church culture that creates it. But I will say that a position like being the quote unquote man of God it's a super electromagnetic force pulling narcissists and abusers and people who do want to wield power. I kind of break it down. It's the same way you see the cops kind of play out in two ways. Like, we have this idea, like, are all cops bad? Of course not. But when you have a role where you get to exert a lot of force and dominance over other people, it makes sense why some people that go to police academies and want to put on a uniform is because they want to exert that power over somebody else. You'll also get the people that desperately want a position where they can serve graciously and care for other people. But you're going to draw those two extremes. You're going to draw the very selfless, heroic person and the narcissistic abuser in equal measure. Like, you're going to always draw people to those positions of power every single time. And so, yeah, it does happen in churches a lot, but it's because the power dynamics, first and foremost, especially in the IFB, when you've got one man running the show, if you get the wrong man in that position, it's going to be a pretty rough show.
How great this work is that you do and how important it is. Because sometimes you probably don't get the credit that you deserve, because people being able to share their story is so healing. And I only know that because they accidentally happened to me with this podcast, right? People open up and share, I share. I'm like, holy shit, I'm healing. Like, from all the crazy stuff I went through, the more I share, the more I heal on a level of, I don't know what it does, man, but it gives others permission to share. And it's like, oh, they're just like me. I'm just like you. Oh, okay. We're all together on this. Like, we're all doing our best to heal. And what I love about what you're doing is you're offering people that opportunity, that invitation to share, right? Yeah. To heal. So how has that journey impacted you? And is there any specific story that really hit home for you that was like, wow, that was like impactful, and just to kind of keep that fire fueling within you?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing for me, I mean, it's hard to pick one, because I'm like 120 episodes in of these stories. And that's just the stories that actually get recorded. Like, I get my inbox, I'm sure yours does as well. My inbox explodes with like tons of stories of these situations. It's been really impactful, and getting to hear from people, I've talked with people who, I've been through the worst. I just talked to someone yesterday. I said, I'm so sorry that we had to meet like this, but like, I'm meeting people having a conversation about the most horrific chapter of their life and how it affected them, and then saying goodbye, And so it's very heavy stuff, but it's also the reason it's very powerful is that I have people who, for 20, 30 years sat with this thing. I talked with someone yesterday who, experienced abuse as a teenager, for 3 years by the hands of a sibling, and they didn't share that with anyone, and that was their family, until they were 30 years old. They didn't share that with me until, 10, 15 years later than that. So like, this is someone here who's around 40 and has held this secret their entire life. And now they're sharing it and getting to help. Like they said at the end, if this helps one person who went through something like me, it's worth it. And so like, for me, it's really cool seeing when you can see that weight come off the shoulders of like, okay, I'm talking about it. This happened. I get to share my story. But then you always, like, 9 times out of 10, the conversation ends with them saying, I just hope this helps somebody. Like, I hope this helps the little girl who's scared to say something, or the little boy that's scared to say something, or the person who was like me. I hope that they can hear this and know they're not alone. Like, that to me is what's been amazing. And it's been cool seeing, it's bittersweet, but now there's this community of thousands of people that are all supporting each other and sharing these stories that are horrific and awful. But knowing you're not alone makes it a lot easier to kind of work through this. So yeah, that's what's motivated me and fueled me, is every time I do an episode, I'll get 4 or 5 emails from somebody saying, that felt like you just recorded my story. Like, that literally feels word for word like what I went through. And it's equal measure heartbreaking and also extremely exciting, because you've got this level of, like, man, I hate that this is relevant to anybody. I hate that this show connects with anyone, but I'm glad that all these people that felt alone for 30, 40 years now have an outlet to kind of share.
Man, you're creating something that's so healing for people, because people think that their story is so unique and that nobody will understand them.
Yeah.
Everybody's seeking permission.
Right. Well, that's what I felt when I started the show. Is I started the show with the intent, I mean, initially, the show was an afterthought. Initially, I was like, man, I want to do a documentary on this. So I kind of just threw out a test in the water, say, anyone care about this? And I was hoping I could find 3 people that would be willing to share. And like the next day, I had 20 messages from people going like, just saw this, I want to be interviewed. Whoa. And so I was like, I got to do a podcast, because I got to fit all 20 of these people. And now, like I said, I'm 120 episodes in, it's not slowing down. And so, it gave me, like, I was asking permission after growing up in it, after 7 years after having left, just sitting with it and just going like, I wish somebody would do something. Like, me saying anything publicly, like seeing that flood of responses gave me the permission to talk about things that, like I said, I didn't think they were big trauma points for me, but then being able to work through it, like, I understand how much it really did affect me and how much I needed to talk about it. And it's been probably more healing for me than anything that I've ever done in my entire life.